All right, welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive.
Hmm.
Today we're going to tackle something pretty fundamental, I think, to, well, just about everything we do. From little everyday puzzles to those, like, huge leaps of innovation. We're talking about creativity.
Yeah, and this isn't just going to be one of those like casual chats about, getting those creative juices flowing or anything. We're
Wow.
we're going deeper. We're basing this whole exploration on some really interesting research from this paper. It's called "Anchoring the Creative Process Within a Self-Regulated Learning Framework: Inspiring Assessment Methods and Future Research."
Oh, wow. It's a mouthful.
It is. It is. But I think, what we're really trying to do here is uh, move past that kind of airy-fairy talk about creativity and really dig into how it actually works, the mechanics of it
Yeah,
for you.
exactly. And, so often we think about creativity like it's this mysterious thing.
Right. Totally.
Either you've got it or you don't.
Yeah.
But what this research really suggests is that it's something much more active. Like, it's something you can actually get better at.
Absolutely.
So that's our mission today. We're going to unpack that for you. We're going to see what this research tells us about the creative process itself. Like, how can you become more creative?
Right.
And ultimately, how can understanding all of this make you, a more effective, deliberate, creative thinker and learner?
That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's it.
So to kind of, kick things off here, what exactly are we talking about when we say creativity? Like, what does that even mean in the context of this research?
Well, the article, it gives us a really good definition. I mean, it draws on, a ton of previous work, and they define it this way. Creativity is the interaction among aptitude, process, and environment by which an individual or group produces a perceptible product that is both novel and useful as defined within a social context.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little
Yeah,
bit,
right.
because it's not just about having some kind of knack for something,
Hmm.
like the aptitude part.
Right.
What seems really important here is the process part,
Yeah.
like how you actually go about creating.
I think that's such a, key point to kind of hit on right off the bat.
Right.
It underlines the fact that creativity isn't just this like sudden flash of inspiration or something.
Right.
It's about the journey, the steps involved in arriving at that something new and useful
Right.
and doing it within whatever context you're in. So for you, it's really about how you develop those novel and useful ideas or products, not just, the thing itself.
Right, right. It's not just this like magical internal event that just kind of happens.
Right.
The
Yeah.
article even talks about how like some researchers focus on those internal mental processes, like, the whole think outside the box idea.
Uh-huh.
But others look at like specific stages and steps that involve both like what's going on in your head and what you're actually doing.
Exactly. Yeah, it's both.
So like if you're an artist, it's not just about like having the idea for the painting, but also experimenting with different materials or techniques or like, the physical act of creation,
Right. The actual, yeah, the process.
the process.
Yeah.
And within that process, there are like specific creative process strategies you can use,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, are we talking about like different brainstorming techniques or more structured models or what?
Yeah, I mean those are great examples. Like, brainstorming is a classic one. And then there are more structured approaches like the creative problem solving model,
Yeah.
or even things like, Scamper, where you kind of systematically go through like substituting, combining, adapting, modifying, putting to other uses, eliminating, rearranging existing ideas
Oh, wow.
to kind of spark new ones.
Okay.
So yeah, these aren't just like random activities,
Right.
these are deliberate ways to kind of engage with that creative process.
Okay, so creativity really emphasizes the how, the process. Now, this research that we're looking at, it wants to connect that how to another really important idea, self-regulated learning, or SRL.
Right.
So what is SRL all about?
So self-regulated learning, it's all about like how you learn effectively. It's a framework for describing how people set goals for their own learning. They use different strategies to get there. And then, this is key, they think about their own thinking.
Huh.
That's the metacognition part.
Yeah.
It's like, a cycle of taking control of your own learning journey. Think of this as like the owner's manual for your own learning. It's not just happening to you. It's something you can actively use.
So it's not just passively taking in information.
Right.
You're actively guiding your own path.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the article mentions, that there are a few different models of SRL.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like one in particular that we should be kind of focusing on here?
Yeah, so the one they use mostly as their framework is Zimmerman's three-phase model. It breaks down SRL into three key stages that happen in relation to any learning task or performance task you're going to do. And those are forethought, performance, and reflection.
Okay, so let's walk through each of those.
Okay.
What happens in the forethought phase?
So forethought is all about what happens before you even start the task.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So it involves, planning what you want to achieve. That's like the goal-setting aspect. It's about figuring out how you're going to get there, the planning itself, like which steps are you going to take.
Right.
And then really crucially, it includes your motivational beliefs,
Yeah.
your attitudes. Do you believe you can succeed? Are you even interested in this task?
Right.
Things like self-efficacy, your belief in your own ability, and intrinsic motivation, that internal drive to do something because it's enjoyable or meaningful to you.
Right.
Those play a big role here. So really, this phase is about setting the stage mentally and emotionally before you even begin.
Okay, so you're setting the stage mentally and emotionally before you even begin.
Right.
What about performance?
Right.
That sounds like when the actual work happens.
That's it. Performance is when you're in it. You're actively engaged in the task. And as a self-regulated learner, you're using various strategies to optimize how you do it.
Right.
These could be, general strategies like managing your time or focusing your attention, or they could be very specific to the task you're doing.
Right.
So, if you're writing something, you might use outlining as a strategy. If you're trying to solve a problem, you might use a specific problem-solving method.
Right.
So it's really about putting that plan into action and using the right tools as you go.
So it's about putting the plan to action, using the right tools.
Yeah.
But it's not just like blindly following a plan.
No.
Right.
No, not at all.
Like regulated learners, they also actively monitor their progress during this phase.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're constantly checking, am I on track? Is this working? Do I need to adjust how I'm doing things?
Right.
That self-monitoring is vital because it feeds into the next phase.
Okay.
Which is reflection.
So reflection, what goes on in that phase?
So reflection happens after you've done the task, you've completed it, and this is where you evaluate how well you did.
Okay.
That's self-evaluation.
Right.
You think about why you succeeded or didn't succeed,
Okay.
making those causal attributions.
Well,
You think about how satisfied you are with the outcome. And then maybe most importantly for your future learning, you make adaptive inferences. Like,
Yeah.
what did you learn from this?
Right.
What would you do differently next time?
Right. Right.
So this reflection piece kind of completes the cycle.
Yeah.
And then it influences your forethought for future tasks.
Right. So it's this continuous loop of planning, doing, and learning from what you've done.
Right.
Now, here's the big question.
Okay.
How does all of this connect to creativity? How does this SRL framework help us understand the creative process?
Right. That's the central argument of the research here.
Okay.
The authors, they suggest that, the creative process isn't some isolated thing.
Right.
You can understand it, and importantly, you can improve it by looking at it through the lens of self-regulated learning.
Okay.
So they essentially place the creative process and those creative process strategies we talked about primarily within the performance phase of SRL.
Okay.
Right.
So you plan and you get motivated in the forethought phase.
Mm-hmm.
You generate ideas, you use your creative strategies in the performance phase,
Yeah.
and then you look back and learn in the reflection phase.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
So forethought sets the stage for your creative exploration. You set those goals, you plan which creative strategies you might use, and your motivation fuels the whole thing. Then during performance, you're actively in it. You're engaging in that creative process. You're using those strategies, and you're monitoring how your ideas are developing.
Yeah, yeah.
And finally, reflection allows you to assess how well your creative approach worked, and then adapt for future creative challenges.
Right. The article gives a couple of really helpful examples here.
Yeah.
Can we walk through those
Sure.
just to make it a little more concrete?
Yeah.
There's one about dealing with a financial burden.
Yeah. So imagine you're facing this financial problem, right?
Yeah.
In the forethought phase, you set a goal to achieve financial security. You decide to use the creative problem-solving model, a structured approach, along with the Scamper, to generate ideas.
Okay.
And you feel confident that you can come up with a solution.
Right.
That's your self-efficacy kicking in.
Yeah.
Then in performance, you actually start using the steps of that model.
Right.
Fact finding, idea finding, solution finding. And within that, you're applying Scamper to brainstorm possibilities.
Uh-huh.
You're also monitoring like how many ideas you're generating if you're sticking to your strategies.
Uh-huh.
Finally, reflection. You look back. Were the solutions any good?
Yeah.
Did using the CPS model and Stamper actually help you? If not, why not?
Right.
And then what should you do differently next time you face a similar problem?
Right. Right.
So, seeing it broken down like that can be really helpful.
Right. Right. It really breaks down like a seemingly complex problem into these manageable steps.
Right.
And there was also an artistic example, right?
Yes.
About an artist creating a piece.
So imagine an artist who sets a goal to express a particular idea through their art.
Uh-huh.
In forethought, they're planning which materials do they use, which techniques.
Right.
And they feel motivated to bring their vision to life. Then, during performance, as they're actually creating, they might use strategies like modeling, looking at other artists' work for inspiration, or analogizing, drawing parallels between their idea and something else.
Right.
And they're constantly looking at the work in progress, monitoring if it's aligning with their initial idea.
Okay.
And then, after they're finished, reflection. Are they satisfied with it?
Right.
Did the techniques they chose work well? What would they try differently next time?
Right. Right.
So these examples, they really clarify how that creative process, again, it isn't just this mystery, but it's something that unfolds within this framework.
Yeah. So seeing these examples really clarifies how the creative process isn't just this black box, but something that unfolds within this framework of SRL.
Right.
Now, why does this connection even matter?
Right.
What are the benefits of thinking about creativity this way?
Well, there are several key benefits highlighted in the research.
So-
Firstly, and this is probably the most important one, this framework promotes the idea that creativity can be learned.
Okay.
By seeing it as a process involving, again, those learnable strategies and those self-regulation skills, it really counters that misconception that creativity is some fixed innate talent.
Right. Right.
And this is so important, especially if you're in a position to, guide others.
Yeah. Yeah.
It suggests that fostering creativity, it isn't about waiting for inspiration to strike.
Right.
It's about teaching these processes, encouraging these learnable processes.
Right. Right.
So it's not something you have or you don't. It's something you develop.
Yeah, that's a huge shift in perspective for a lot of people. Because if you think it's something you either have or you don't, you might not even try
Exactly.
to get better.
Totally. And then the second benefit here is that these creative process strategies, they might actually improve your general learning.
Oh, okay. How so?
So the article suggests that when you use those creative problem-solving techniques to engage with new content, you might understand it better and retain it for longer.
Okay.
There's even been research that shows academic gains and better long-term memory when students creatively manipulate information.
Okay.
So it's not just about being creative for creativity's sake.
Right.
It can boost all your other learning outcomes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's almost like a secret weapon for learning.
Right.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So it suggests that creativity isn't just this separate skill. It can actually boost your overall learning effectiveness.
Exactly.
Now, the third benefit the article mentions is that this SRL framework can actually help organize and understand the existing research on creativity.
Yes, exactly.
Explain that.
So, there are tons of models and theories about the creative process. Each
Yeah.
has its own perspective. But the SRL framework, it provides this common structure by placing those creative models within the performance phase.
Yeah.
This lets you compare and contrast different approaches, see where they overlap, where the gaps are.
Yeah.
So instead of just adding another model to the pile, it helps you make sense of what we already know.
Okay, so it's like providing a map to navigate the landscape of all the research that's already out there.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, the article also dives into how we can actually assess creativity in light of this SRL framework.
Mm.
And it talks about some limitations of current assessment methods.
Right, yeah. So
Yeah.
a lot of those current creativity assessments, they focus on the outcome, the novelty and usefulness of the final product,
Right.
or on general traits or divergent thinking skills.
Right.
And while those are valuable, they don't really tell us much about how someone's being creative, the actual process they're engaged in, or how they're regulating themselves during the process.
Yeah.
They don't capture the use of those specific strategies or the SRL components.
Right.
So we might see the creative output, but we don't know what steps led to it or how they managed their thinking along the way.
Yeah. So we might see the final painting, but we don't know anything about the actual process, the brushstrokes, or how the artist got there.
Right, exactly.
And to address this, the article proposes using those techniques that are used in self-regulated learning,
Yeah.
like those assessments that are designed to get a better handle on that process itself.
Exactly.
And the article distinguishes between aptitude measures and event measures.
Right.
So what's the difference there?
So aptitude measures, they're looking at how someone generally regulates their learning across different situations.
Okay.
It often involves things like self-report questionnaires, where people are reflecting on their typical learning strategies or ratings by teachers or others, or even certain types of interviews that ask about past experiences.
Right.
So it gives you this broad picture of someone's tendencies related to both learning and creativity.
And these are also commonly used in creativity research, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Questionnaires about creative styles or, the cognitive processes that people use.
Yeah. Yeah. You might see questionnaires asking about, beliefs in unconscious processes or the use of certain strategies in general. Teacher ratings might look at things like a student's persistence in problem solving or their willingness to take risks.
Right.
And then retrospective interviews might ask creators about their past processes.
Yeah.
And so again, giving you this broad picture of someone's tendencies
Right.
related to both.
Okay.
And these methods, they're easy to administer.
Yeah.
They often have good psychometric properties, so they're useful for large-scale studies,
Right.
but they do have limitations.
Right. So relying on memory, for
Yeah.
one, could be a little iffy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and people might over-report using strategies if they seem desirable.
Right.
I always use brainstorming.
Right.
Plus, these measures, they don't tell us much about how someone approaches a specific creative task.
Right. In a particular context.
Yeah. Right, yeah, in a particular context,
Oh,
and that's
yeah.
where those event measures come in.
Yeah. Essentially like moving from just looking at the final painting to understanding, like I said, those brushstrokes.
Exactly. Yeah. So event measures, they're designed to assess the process as it's happening in real time within a specific task.
Okay.
This allows researchers to look at the more nuanced differences in how people regulate their learning and engage in those creative processes depending on the context.
Okay.
So really capturing what's happening as it happens.
Right. And the article highlights a few different types of these event measures.
Uh-huh.
One is journals or diaries.
Yeah.
How are those used?
So in a SRL research, journals or diaries can track a learner's planning before a task, their reflections afterwards, sometimes across multiple sessions.
Okay.
In creativity research, they use variations like experience sampling methods,
Uh-huh.
which prompt participants to record their thoughts and behaviors at random times throughout the day
Oh, wow.
to kind of get insights into their creative moments.
Okay.
Reflective diaries can explore how things like emotions or the environment might influence creativity as well.
Okay, so it's about capturing those in-the-moment experiences, reflections.
Yeah, exactly.
Another one that the article mentions is direct observations.
Right.
So how does that work in the context of creativity in SRL?
So direct observation, it involves actually watching someone engage in a task and then noting their use of SRL processes or, behaviors that are indicative of those processes.
Uh-huh.
The article mentions different approaches, like really in-depth inductive observations in real-world settings,
Oh, okay.
observing scientists in a lab, to more focused microanalytic observations, looking at very specific moments that might foster or hinder creativity.
Right.
There's even self-directed observation where people film themselves creating and then analyze their own process.
Well, that's interesting. So you're literally watching creativity unfold.
Yeah, you are.
That's cool. And then there are think aloud protocols.
Right.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, so think alouds, they involve participants verbalizing their thoughts as they're working on a task
Right.
continuously. And then researchers analyze those verbal reports to identify those SRL processes,
Yep.
strategy use, monitoring, adapting. And while think alouds have been used, extensively in studying reading and problem solving, the article points out they haven't been used as much in creativity research,
Okay.
but they could be really valuable for understanding the dynamic, fluid nature of the creative process. It's like getting this window into those internal decisions and shifts in thinking as it's happening.
Right. And then finally, the article really emphasizes SRL microanalysis interviews.
Yeah,
This sounds like a key assessment method in this whole framework.
it is.
What's that all about?
So SRL microanalysis, it's a structured interview that's conducted at specific times during a task. And it uses these brief, open-ended questions that are really tailored to the task and target specific SRL processes.
Okay.
In the forethought, performance, and reflection phases,
Right.
it's similar to Think Alouds in that it's gathering real-time data
Uh-huh.
during a real task,
Right.
but it's more structured,
Okay.
with specific questions designed to really tap into those SRL processes that might not be verbalized naturally.
So instead of just letting them kind of think aloud,
Yeah.
you're prompting them at key points in the process.
Yeah, you're guiding them a little bit.
Right, okay. And the article even gives an example of how you might apply this to, like, a creative problem-solving task,
Uh-huh.
increasing library patronage.
Yes, exactly. So before the task, you might ask questions about like their plans for coming up with solutions or how confident they feel in generating many ideas.
Okay,
That's forethought.
right.
During idea generation, you could ask about the strategies they're using or how they're monitoring their progress. That's performance. And after they've come up with solutions, you might ask like how satisfied they are with their ideas.
Okay.
That's reflection. And the beauty of this method is that it's directly linked to that SRL framework.
Right.
It lets researchers measure these processes as they're naturally occurring within that specific task.
Okay.
And you can even code the creative solutions themselves and the strategies used.
Okay, cool. So that really illustrates the potential of this method for getting, a much more nuanced understanding of that creative process.
Right.
Now, what are the practical implications of using these event measures more broadly in research and in practice?
Okay, so the article, it highlights several important implications.
Okay.
One, these measures can help us pinpoint why successful creativity interventions work.
Okay.
Like if we teach a specific technique like Scamper and then use event measures to see if people are actually using it during a creative task, and if that use correlates with, good outcomes,
Right.
then we can understand the mechanism.
Right. It's not just knowing if something works, it's knowing how it works.
Exactly, yeah. And second, event measures can, they can extend experimental studies.
Oh, okay.
Like studies that look at the impact of instructions like, be creative.
Right.
They often have indirect evidence for what's going on cognitively.
Okay.
Event measures can provide more direct evidence by capturing what people are actually doing differently
Right.
when they're told to be creative.
Okay.
Similarly, if a study shows that imposing constraints enhances creativity, event measures can help us see if people are using different strategies under those constraints.
Okay.
So you're really getting under the hood of those effects.
Yeah. Like you're not just looking at the output, you're seeing what's actually happening.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And then third, these measures, they can provide this consistent way to study creativity across domains, tasks, individuals.
Okay.
By using similar procedures, similar coding schemes, we can make more meaningful comparisons. You could see if experts and novices use different strategies, or if people adapt their strategies depending on the task,
Yeah.
which is really valuable in building this more unified understanding of creativity across contexts.
Right. And finally, how can these event measures help people who are in the trenches, like, practitioners, teachers, mentors?
Yeah, well, because they're providing real-time data about the student's process, practitioners can give more targeted feedback during the activity.
Okay.
So if a student's stuck, the teacher might prompt them with a specific strategy. Also, teaching students to self-assess their own SRL during creative tasks using those kinds of prompts can boost their metacognitive awareness, help them become more self-directed.
Right.
So you're moving feedback from evaluating the final product to actually guiding the process.
So it's not just waiting until the end to say good job or this needs work, but it's actually like intervening as it's happening.
Right. Exactly.
This has been a really interesting look into this research.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
To wrap things up, what's like the big takeaway?
So the big takeaway here is that viewing the creative process through this lens of self-regulated learning, it gives us this powerful framework for understanding how creativity develops and then how you can assess it.
Right.
It moves us away from that, mysterious innate talent idea towards recognizing it as these, again, learnable strategies and self-regulation skill.
Right. And understanding those processes can empower you to be more intentional and effective in your own, creative work and learning.
Right. It's not about just waiting for that aha moment.
Right.
It's about engaging in this process.
Right. Right. It's something that you can actually have control over.
Exactly. So, one final thought to kind of leave you with. Think about a recent problem you solved or a creative task that you tackled.
Okay.
Reflect on those forethought, performance, and reflection phases. What strategies did you use, consciously or unconsciously? How could understanding these principles enhance your approach next time?
That's a great question. And, if you're curious to explore this more, definitely look into self-regulated learning techniques
Yeah,
or specific problem-solving methods.
absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.